So we always try to start out with non-spoilers, general impressions, things like that, in case any of you who haven't seen the episode don't want to be spoiled. We can just give you some of our impressions and things that we think about it, and then you can tune out for a while, and you can come back during the news segment if you want. So, Dave, let's start off with you with general impressions for Star Trek Nepenthe, and I think I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Well, let's see. General impressions of the show. I liked this episode. I didn't love it, but I'd have to say it's probably one of the better episodes. When we get into the spoilers and a deep dive, I'll talk more about what it was about the episode that I didn't particularly care for. But I really enjoyed. I think this is no spoiler. Anyone who's seen any of the trailers know that Riker and Troy is in this particular episode. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I can't really get into the reasons for why until we actually get into the spoiler part of the conversation about this particular episode of Star Trek Picard. That's my overall impressions. I'd have to say, rating it against the other episodes, I'd have to say this one is probably up there with the premiere, but not quite there for me personally. So tell me, Eric, what did you think about this episode of Star Trek Picard?
I'm a little bit more in the middle. This episode obviously has gotten a lot of buzz. This isn't a spoiler because if you don't know this, it's like you're not even interested in the show. This episode obviously it was highly anticipated because we finally get to see Riker and Troy in the Star Trek Picard world and see what they've kind of been up to and all that good stuff. So it was highly anticipated because of that. I had a sort of mixed reaction to that homecoming. But one thing that I will say, and I don't think this is a spoiler, because I think people are wondering about this, especially people that are kind of like, should I watch this? Shouldn't I? I don't know how to feel about this. Maybe you didn't like the last episode or you really hated episode 5 like I did. But the one thing that I will say is that it's nice that Riker and Troy aren't just a cameo. So that's something that I think a lot of people going into this will want to know, whether it's worth watching or not. Is, hey, was this just a cameo? Are they, that kind of thing? I won't say whether they lived or died. That I think would be a spoiler, or what the exact situation is until we get into the spoilers and the deep dive. But just for people wondering about that, it's not just a cameo. So they do feature prominently in the episode. Other than that, the other thing is, I constantly harp on the issue that Picard is a little disjointed as a narrative. We've got like 3 different settings now going on with the characters. And I was actually really looking forward to the fact that, in the last episode, we kind of were like, it looked like we were finally going to get everybody together. And that didn't happen. That didn't happen. And instead, we actually got a bigger separation. Because before, Picard has always basically been like 2 storylines going on. One storyline is basically the story of Picard getting his crew together, kind of explaining who these people are, kind of setting the chess pieces, if you will. And the other one's all about Soji and the affair that she's having with this Zhat Vash agent. She doesn't know it was a Zhat Vash agent. And if you don't know what Zhat Vash is, that's the Super Tal Shiar. So you've had these 2 storylines that are kind of, happening separately. There's no real interaction between the 2 of them until episode 6. And so I was really looking forward to the fact that we kind of get everybody together, but that's not what happens. Now we have even more separation with the characters and weird things are going on. And for me, it really gives a very uneven tone to the episode. It's something that's kind of like just straight up off-putting to me because I don't, all these different narratives going on at the same time, it gets confusing. And then you have like wildly different tones. We had one of our viewers talked about, this is Star Trek, the bipolar frontier. And I really feel like that's the way that this episode is. It's like, it's just all over the place. Again, it goes into some really dark places. And it just seems like they are absolutely determined to make Star Trek Picard as like hopeless and as damaged and as neurotic as possible. So that's kind of where I'm at now. Even with saying all that, it doesn't mean that I hated the episode. It's not on the same level as episode 5 in terms of being that bad. Well, I have to take that back because there is a death of a major character in this episode. That's a little bit of a spoiler, but it's not. You don't know which one. There are multiple major characters in this show, so that might actually make you want to see it and say, "Well, who died?" That kind of a thing. I wasn't very happy about that, about the death. We'll get into that in the deep dive. But overall, I think Picard has a problem with having a focused narrative. Bobby just chimed in. Bobby, thank you for chiming in. He said, "Yep, this one was scattered," and literally, it's scattered. Says Katie. Oh, Katie, your comment as well says, "I was talking to my mother, and she told me that she doesn't even really want to watch the show. To be honest, I understand. In her words, quote, everything is dark. Death, no camaraderie, no final frontier." And Katie, that's kind of how I'm feeling about the show in a lot of ways myself. Now, I know that, Katie, that you might like the next episode just because of something that I saw in the preview, and we'll talk about that in the deep dive. You might be interested in the next episode. But like Bobby said, I feel like it very much is, the scattered frontier, if you will. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
So I guess since we're good there, I guess we should just go ahead and get into the spoiler talk. Because like I said, I quite liked a lot about this episode, but there were some things I did not like, but I can't really get into those too much in detail until we actually get into the deep dive spoiler conversation. For the people
I think it's not really considered a spoiler to say this. Did you like the appearance of Riker and Troy? Did you feel like that story worked? Did you like it?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I have some problems with it, but I did like seeing them quite a bit.
Because I think a lot of people, that's what they really want to know. You know what I mean? They just, even if they haven't seen the episode, they want to know, well, were Troy and Riker treated well? Do they have like a satisfying story? I think that's something a lot of people want to know before they even watch the episode, before they even give it the time of day.
I enjoyed seeing them, and like I said, I have some issues with it, but I did enjoy seeing them quite a bit. And that's kind of a big high point for me with this episode, was seeing them.
Do you think hardcore TNG fans are going to like what they did with Riker and Troy and the whole interaction? Do you think they're going to like that?
I am going to say it's probably going to be a mixed bag. Because
I'm going to agree with you there.
I could see where some people would just enjoy seeing them because it was great to see them kind of back at those characters. But at the same point, too, the fact that at some point, at one point I was expecting Riker to say something that was going to turn out they were on a holodeck, like a holodeck, and Nepenthe was actually a starship. For half a second, I thought he was going to, because when he said, well, I can't get into it till we get in spoiler conversation.